The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and don't necessarily reflect the views of WOWT.
Here we are once again with another episode of Becca's Talking here on the podcast. By the way, make sure that you like the Becca's Talking YouTube channel, also the Becca's Talking Facebook page, so that you keep up to date with what we're doing here. And the YouTube channel, we've been doing this now for a little over a year, so we've got all sorts of interviews in there. So if you missed some, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, and see what we've got on the Becca's Talking YouTube channel. But today, I've got a great podcast here about what's going on in the city of Omaha. Boy, there's a lot going on in the city of Omaha. Heath Mello joins me in a second, but first I've got to talk about the fine folks at Havana Garage. Havana Garage in the Old Market, you know, they've been around for a long time. And you don't stay in that business for a long time unless you got something really good. And they do. They got a great atmosphere there. A nice cigar bar, a great humidor, a big selection of cigars, and a wonderful whiskey selection. But yeah, even it's just a place to go, and maybe, if you don't have a cigar, you don't have to have a cigar. Just go and relax and talk and enjoy the atmosphere. Got kind of a nice Rat Pack atmosphere there with Sam and Dean and Joey Bishop, and of course, old Blue Eyes himself. Check it out in the Old Market of Havana Garage. Heath Mello is the president and was the official CEO of the Omaha Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, whatever you want to call me, Tom.
Well, I know you don't want that. You don't want that. He's, of course, a former state senator and been actively involved in the Omaha community for years and years and years. And I wanted to have you on the podcast because there is so much in Omaha, that's going on right now. You take a look at what's happening out there with Nebraska Medicine, what's happening there. Of course, we got the streetcar, we've got that and other development, all the apartments. There's so much I want to talk about. So let's get right to it. What is, okay, I mentioned the apartments. It's something that's been bugging me for a while. Where are all these people going to come from? It seems like everywhere I turn, there's a new apartment building coming up. Right there on Dodge, not far from where I live. There's one that I think they got about 9,000 units in this thing. It's like 48th and Dodge. It's this huge apartment complex. Where are these people going to be coming from, and what do you see as the perceived growth? Where's it going?
Well, Tom, first off, thanks for having me on. We're gonna have a great dialogue, and so I'm really excited to spend some time with you. When it comes to population growth and housing, it really is it's a tale of two cities sometimes when we talk about that issue. Partially because you have to look at our population growth from a metro-wide perspective. We're seeing population growth from the Omaha MSA. We just reached that million population milestone back earlier this spring, which that was a fairly big milestone for the metro area. But also in that same vein, we've also had fairly slow population growth over the last decade. We grow, but we don't grow maybe as fast as some of the other cities and regions that we compete against. But the issue when it comes to housing is that you're seeing more apartments because right now it's easier to be able to build apartments than it is to build single family houses because there's a lot of headwind right now in the housing market. People that we talk to, whether it's in Omaha, whether it's in Council Bluffs, Fremont, Blair, it's not easy finding home builders to build what most people would say is an affordable, accessible home. Starting homes in most communities right now are a minimum $350,000, and that's a starter home right now. And the reality is that's becoming a bigger challenge in terms of new housing and finding home builders who want to go into the market at that price point. It's difficult because they can go into a price point much, much higher right now.
I understand that, but I'm talking about the growth, though, because, it's like, if somebody lives in Omaha already and they buy another house, that's one thing, right? If somebody, maybe is it just kids that are being raised and then moving out or people moving into the city? And if they are moving into the city, what's bringing in this growth?
Well, I think it's more of our housing stock as a region overall has not been keeping up with growth. I guess that means maybe the answer I was trying to give you is that the population growth over the years has really been centered around filling apartments, maybe more so than filling houses. And if you were to talk to more and more people in the community, housing has become a much, much bigger issue, not just in Omaha, but our whole surrounding metro area. And I can't go to any one of our kind of metro communities and talk to a local mayor or a local bank president, and everybody in the community is talking about we need more housing because you've seen a lot of apartments built, but as I said, apartments are easier to build. It's quicker to build. You can get more people in multifamily housing units like that quickly. Where trying to build a housing unit is, housing development takes a lot of time.
When you talk to these business leaders, do they tell you that housing is maybe an issue why they don't expand or bring in more people into town? Is that an issue with them? Or when you do talk to them, what do they see as the future of the growth of this city?
So I think when you think about growth, if it comes about pure population, that is one of the limiting factors, I would say, to our future growth right now is our housing and our ability to keep up with more new housing stock in the region. If we don't figure out a longer term plan to address more housing options in the metro region, not just Omaha proper, but the metro region. That's Blair, that's La Vista, that's Gretna, that's Fremont, that's Plattsmouth, all of the metro area that's within 25 minutes of Omaha. We are going to be limited in terms of the amount of people we can take in to fill new jobs. And so when we're out as a chamber trying to recruit companies to move here, to bring those new jobs, it really becomes a little bit of a challenge at the end of the day in terms of whether or not we can bring also people with those jobs. And that's kind of the bigger conversation that's being had right now in economic development. Is it's one thing for me to go talk to Becca Inc. And say, hey, we want to bring 1,000 jobs from Becca Inc. from Atlanta to move them to Omaha. But it's a question of the sense that we want to bring the 1,000 jobs and 1,000 people from Becca Inc. from Atlanta to Omaha. And the challenge we were talking a little bit about is, hey, we've got to be thinking globally right now in terms of addressing a lot of other needs in terms of not just the people, but where are these people going to live? Where are they going to send their kids to school? How are we going to ensure that we have that quality of life for 1,000 new people coming into the community? Because right now, apartments is the housing that seems to be available for folks.
You talk about this, and again, when you try to bring businesses into town, a lot of it is the image. And it's not that Omaha has a bad image. It's that we sort of have no image. We don't do enough, I think, to promote our restaurants. We got such a great food culture here. We don't do enough to promote that. We don't do enough to promote the history of this town. There's a lot of things in this city that frustrate me sometimes because I think we could be doing so much more than what we're doing. Is that an issue of trying to get more money to the Visitors Bureau to get that out there? Or can the chamber do things to help boost that image? I know that you've tried in the past with, we don't coast and all that, slogans, rare, well done and other slogans. Are there things that we can do to help build up that image so that we do have, a better image?
You touched on a great point, which, the chamber, we released a 3-year economic development strategy back in January to kind of guide our work and the work we do for the community. And one of those key priorities, we had 3 kind of pillars that we focused on. You hit on the last one we talk about, which is we call Destination OMA. How are we selling Omaha to the region? How are we selling Omaha and Greater Omaha to the entire country and to the world? Because you captured what we hear from people, which is folks don't have a bad impression of our region, don't have a bad impression of Omaha. They just don't have much of an impression of Omaha. And the challenge is how do we get out and tell our story more about the great quality of life we have, the great schools we have, everything that we know makes Omaha a special place. Obviously, you look at some of the great amenities we've got in downtown Omaha, some of the great activity that you're seeing along, I would say, Midtown as we go further west. We're going to have a brand new central library there off 72nd Dodge. Keep going further west, and you'll see more activity. The challenge, though, is that we just haven't been able to develop that really cohesive strategy that the whole community can utilize that's more than just a slogan. And I think that's part of the strategy that the Chamber's working on in concert with the city of Omaha, working with the Visitors and Convention Visitors Bureau, working with other partners in the community who are doing work across the country out telling people about Omaha. Because what we're looking at, it's not just telling a story, it's having other people help tell that story. It's businesses who are located in Omaha they're out telling the story of Omaha because they're trying to recruit people to come here as well. So they're trying to fill vacant jobs here, and they're out trying to say, you need to come to company X or you need to come to company Y, and we're going to tell you why Omaha's a great place to live, to work, to play, and this is why you don't know anything about it, and we want to help tell that story.
One of the images that we do have, every year we did a lot of publicity with the Oracle of Omaha.
Yes.
Somehow the Wizard of West Des Moines doesn't have the same ring to it. What is latest with Berkshire? I mean, Warren has made it very clear he wants to keep the same culture and that he has a love for Omaha. But, when the head of Berkshire Hathaway is living in West Des Moines, there are people that are a little bit leery about what the future holds. Have you had talks with them? Are they still planning on keeping the shareholders meeting here? And what can you tell us about that?
All I can really share is that Berkshire has been clear they're going to continue to hold the shareholders meeting here in Omaha, and as the chamber, we were very upfront with folks of saying, hey, this is going to require a number of community and business leaders to continue to engage Greg Abel, the new CEO of Berkshire, when he takes over, to ensure that we have a welcoming community to him. We know he's going to live in West Des Moines. His son is going to finish school there, and he was very clear he wants to see that through. But we want to make sure that he knows he's got a home here in Omaha as well, knowing he's going to be traveling back and forth. And we'll build that relationship as strong as humanly possible, realizing he's going to be commuting that, it's a 2-hour drive. My wife is from West Des Moines, so I know that drive very, very well in the sense of getting here from Omaha to West Des Moines. But it's more in the sense of it's really an opportunity for not just me and the chamber and our members, but the whole community to really embrace and welcome Greg into this new role, because Berkshire is synonymous with Omaha. I mean, we always say, it's kind of Omaha's become kind of the Woodstock of capitalism because of Warren, and I think we're very fortunate to have that moniker, and we have to really protect that in terms of what Berkshire Hathaway has done for our community, and we've got to be able to ensure that continues with the next generation leadership.
But I would imagine that people in West Des Moines are in Greg Abel's ear, and he has a lot of connections there, and they're trying to, as you try to sell businesses to come to Omaha, they're trying to sell, him on moving it to Des Moines. So it's nothing. You can't. Let me ask. I mean, can you really rest on your laurels? I mean, I look at what happened with ConAgra. When all of a sudden they just up and left.
Yeah.
Which I think, although a lot of jobs have stayed here, it hurt the community. It hurt our image. So you understand that there's a little concern about what the future holds for that.
I'd be remiss to not say that ConAgra didn't leave. They did move their headquarters and about 300 jobs or so from Omaha, and they're a great Chamber of Commerce member. They're actively involved with us, and then Omaha and the metro area still is their largest footprint in America. And so we know that there's still maybe some lingering feelings about ConAgra. We reinforce ConAgra has been a great community and corporate partner, even with their headquarters moving out of Omaha. They've been able to continue a very strong presence here in the metro area. But if anything, your question about resting on our laurels, that is what I go to bed about every night thinking about, is that no matter how good of a day we may have had at the Chamber of Commerce in terms of engaging businesses, working a new prospect who may be thinking about coming to the community, identifying a possible new lead that is in an industry that we want to start to grow. We're always thinking about also our current employers here, and knowing that there are other communities out there day in, day out who are thinking about how can they come and try to convince one of our employers to go expand or go move to their community. And so it's a never-ending battle and a very, very fierce competition when it comes to economic development.
How do you get the leads? You say, follow a lead. Do businesses call you and say, hey, look, we're looking to expand. Tell us about Omaha. Do you have to go knocking on doors saying, hey, you want to expand, come to Omaha? How does that work?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
What you just said, and then some, and then some. I mean, it's in the economic development world, yes, that you get some random random leads of companies calling saying, hey, I'm thinking about coming to Omaha, and they randomly call you, or they get your email, your phone number from someone, and you get a prospect or a lead that way. Sometimes, yes, you're cold calling companies based on what you heard through the grapevine or a piece of information that you want to follow up on to see if this is true, to try to see if that's a real lead. A lot of what we do, though, in the business is working with site selectors. And site selectors are professionals that do this for a living. They work on behalf of companies where they're out scouring the country for different sites in different cities that their clients may want to consider moving to. And they work, kind of do the research, they engage the community, they engage local economic development teams to see if this may be a good fit for some of their clients. And, we just restarted a real big initiative at the Chamber this summer during the College World Series called our Select Tour, where we brought in, nearly a dozen site selectors from across the country to kind of show them the best of Omaha. Showed them the best of our region, actually. Took them, to a College World Series game, showed them around, the city's urban core, talked about what's happening, on the riverfront to West Omaha, to Council Bluffs, to Offutt Air Force Base, to show all things that a lot of folks who do this for a living for their clients had no clue of what's been happening in Omaha for the last 10 years. And that's really part of how you start to plant the seeds for the future, so to speak, to kind of to kind of develop your seed corn, so to speak, with the hopes that a site selector will call you and say, Tom, I've been thinking about you, and I've been thinking about Omaha. I may have someone who wants to talk to you about a potential move to downtown Omaha or to Heartwood Preserve out in West Omaha. And that's really what we think about, what we do day in, day out, is that ability to kind of meet people, build relationships, share information. But it's also, as you shared earlier, it's about marketing. It's about selling your community. It's about us working with businesses, working with the media, working with the mayor, working with the governor, anybody who's got a microphone that can go out and say, here's what's happening in Omaha. And here's why you need to listen and find out what's happening in Omaha, because everybody's got different networks. And we've come to find out we've gotten leads from elected officials who run into a company somewhere and they're like, hey, follow up with this company. They may be interested in moving to Omaha. And then sometimes we will get, as I said, a piece of information that is maybe second or third removed that we do some due diligence on, some research on. We find another piece in the media that gets reported. We're then able to take that and start to do some cold calling and try to find if there's a way to get a meeting with people.
When we don't get one of those businesses, when they say no, and the site selector says, hey, thanks for the College World Series tickets, but we're not interested. Why aren't they? What are I mean, I could tell you a bunch of selling points for this city. I love this city. Yeah. But at the same time, other people look at it and say like, oh no, Omaha, no way. What are some of the reasons you hear?
That's a question I get every day.
Yeah.
In some form or another. It's like, why not us? Why not us? Why didn't they pick us? And in any given company or any given project, it's always unique. There's always unique circumstances of why company X chose to go to Kansas City versus company Y chose to go to Denver, and company Z chose to come to Omaha. And, part of it is the industry itself. They may find a stronger connection to the industry in another community than they have in Omaha. It may be the talent or the workforce needs that they have. Some may come in and say, we need 500 employees immediately for our manufacturing plant. They may feel at the end of the day, we as a community can't give them 500 manufacturing employees right away in comparison to a community that just lost a manufacturing plant because of a closure, and they've got 300 people who are unemployed who can fill that void immediately. That's the kind of difference that sometimes happens that's serendipitous, I would say, that you can't control as a community, but those are things that sometimes happen. There's also those other attributes like tax incentives. There's those attributes like energy availability, attributes like public infrastructure that's available, things that we as a chamber and as community leaders are constantly thinking about, working on, saying, how can we be more competitive to compete against other cities that we're traditionally competed against for major projects, mid-sized projects moving forward.
Are we a victim of our own success in that regard? You say they need 500 employees. We don't have 500 employees because our unemployment is so low.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, that is, I would say that is always an ongoing challenge that I would say we wrestle with, is that, whether you're talking about an existing employer, whether you're talking about Mutual of Omaha that's just down the street that is looking for maybe 100 employees, or we're talking about an out-of-state insurance company that maybe wants to open up a new office here in Omaha that's looking for 200 employees to start. It becomes a question of whether or not there's 100 employees that can fill the roles that they need in a short amount of time. And yes, I think there's always that mixed bag of us having very, very low unemployment as a metro, and we rank really, really high in a lot of rankings for having that low unemployment. But when you have essentially full employment in your community, it makes it difficult in terms of filling new jobs because someone's leaving another job. Mm-hmm. Someone's leaving one job essentially to go to another job, and then that ultimately is impacting that business or that industry somewhere else. That's part of the rationale, and to your earlier question, of why we as a chamber, and we're trying to talk to more and more people in the community about, we have to focus more on population growth as a region. We have to be thinking more about not just recruiting jobs and companies, but we've got to start thinking more about how do we recruit people? How do we get people who used to live in Omaha, graduated from Omaha Central High School or graduated from UNO or went to college at Creighton, and lived here for a while, moved away, and having opportunities maybe in their career to come back to Omaha, but they haven't been to Omaha for 15 years or 20 years. And they don't realize that this city has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. And we have an obligation, I think, right now at this moment in time to start trying to tell that story to people, to say, this is a different Omaha, this is a different metro. And while you went to high school here, you went to college here, you maybe started your career and left, you should consider coming back and restarting your career here, or restarting your family here, or reconsidering a new journey in your life here, because it's a different community than when you left. And we have the same great quality of life we would sell people. And actually, it's even better now in terms of what the community's been able to do in the last 2 decades. But right now, we've got a lot of great career opportunities because companies are looking for people. And that's the big challenge as a chamber and as an economic development organization we have, is trying to go out and recruit more and more people to the region.
Well, you say they're looking for people. I'm looking now, and I'm just thinking about AI. Mm-hmm. And AI is going to get rid of a lot of people. What is the future of AI, and how does the business community adapt to that? You talked about maybe going to the universities, to UNO or Creighton or Bellevue, and trying to recruit these people to stay after they graduate. What are we offering in this new technology to keep these people here, these young people here?
So, I'm a big believer in AI, and I take the perspective that right now you will see more and more companies, more and more businesses that are going to see greater productivity with AI. And I don't know if you're going to see a lot of them shed jobs, so to speak, immediately, as much as that they may not add more jobs because of AI. And that's essentially, I think, what we're starting to see maybe a little bit more in our economy, is that companies are not growing more and more jobs because AI is helping them increase their productivity with their existing workforce. So if you thought you were going to add 250 jobs, AI is now helping you say, look, we don't need to add 250 jobs, we only need to add 25. And that's a fairly big difference when you're thinking about 225 more payrolls to a community. But we as a chamber have really leaned in the AI space. We signed a really unique MOU partnership with the Scott Data Center. Scott Data Center was founded by Walter Scott. It's a not-for-profit data center located in Exarban Village that has a unique mission and role. Kind of started out working with the Department of Defense, created some very high-level security clearance protocols and facilities for various government programs, a lot of cybersecurity work that then they kind of changed and transitioned to be open and available to more private sector and public sector partners along the way. And they, as a data center, has really leaned into some unique technology with NVIDIA, and they've become kind of a unicorn in some form or another in the AI space in terms of what they're able to provide AI companies. And so having such an amazing data center and AI partner located in the middle of America in Omaha, Nebraska, and us being the economic development organization for the region, being able to kind of come together and say, how do we get AI in the hands of more and more local businesses and help them understand about how to take advantage of this from a small business perspective or a large business perspective, realizing that it's happening. We're not going to, this genie is out of the bottle, whether people realize it or not. Yeah. It's not going back in. And so it's more of companies and individuals who can take advantage of this technology are going to be more successful, and helping employees and workers understand how to utilize this technology faster through work at UNO or MCC or Creighton are only going to be more successful in their careers as well. And so this partnership with Scott Data, we're now, give or take, 5 months into this effort. We've been able to get nearly 75 companies to engage in some workshops with them in a variety of different industries, and they're seeing a lot of success. They're seeing companies that otherwise didn't think about AI was going to be useful in their company right away. They may have said, hey, I played around with ChatGPT, and they're like, no, this is something that's well beyond playing around with an app on your phone. This is helping companies rethink their entire business model and helping them become more productive, save more money. And as I've said, it does change the economic dynamics a little bit, even in what we do, where there are companies who are adding maybe less jobs because AI is helping them grow their company in a different way. But the reality is, we know that's the future of the economy. Technology is forever going to change what we do. And we as an organization want the city to become an AI city. We believe that Omaha, with the unique Scott Data Center opportunity, we have Peter Kiewit Institute at UNO, we have universities that have the first AI degrees in the country, that we can do things here, candidly, that are kind of ahead of the curve. And it's just a matter of the willpower, the desire, and the vision to bring enough people together to see it through.
I got to tell you, I know you're very enthused about AI, and I don't want to just be like that old guy curmudgeon. That kind of stirs the hell out of me. I feel like we're living in a 1970s era science fiction film, and those don't end well.
Everyone's scared of the robot, I think. Everyone's always scared of the robot that you can't unplug, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I think when you think about some of the technology that we're utilizing and helping businesses utilize, it's large language models that's really taken in data, it's taken in information and helping businesses sort through that information faster, quicker, and helping them make better decisions and make faster decisions. And that, I think, if anything, is really what we're seeing a lot of excitement about in the business community. It's not, so to speak, we're maybe not there with the robots that are out there that are, out here doing bot podcasts. I mean, we could get on Google and use Google Notebook.
Yeah.
And do a podcast of putting in a document, and it would kick out a podcast at the end of the day. But, it's more of helping businesses make those decisions faster, quicker, and a little bit better reasoned. And I think that's where we're going to continue to try to encourage people to look at it that way, realizing that the productivity gains that companies and businesses will get may be small at first, but it will continue to grow, and it'll help their employees advance in what we know is a changing workforce. And that's perhaps the biggest thing, Tom, is the workforce is changing, and the reality is skill development's changing. And it would be a dereliction of my duty, and I think a lot of other people who are engaged in workforce and economic development, if we didn't start to help ensure people see that technology tidal wave that's going to hit us, to let them know to grab a surfboard and get ready to ride it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, not put the genie back in the bottle. That it is on its way. And you mentioned what they're doing with cybersecurity there at the Scott Center. I want to do a little plug here. There's also doing some great work as far as terrorism, investigating terrorism. And we did a podcast with, and I forget the name of the organization now at UNO.
Insight,
yes. Did a podcast with them about 8 or 9 months ago, so you can check that out on the YouTube channel. I got a lot more questions for Heath here, including what they're going to be doing with Crossroads. But first, I want one more time to remind you about the folks at the Vanna Garage. Chaz and company there have been around, and it's just a nice place. There's so much happening. Talk about everything that's happening here in Omaha. With the CHI Center, with the Orpheum, with the restaurants, the great restaurants that we've got in the old market area there. You've also got all the arts and entertainment, the park, everything out there. When you're going downtown, when you're going down to the old market area, make Havana Garage part of your event. All right, Havana Garage in the old market. So I mentioned Crossroads. Now, you may find this hard to believe, but I can be cynical sometimes. So the cynic in me is saying, okay, I remember there was a lot of talk during the mayor's election where Gene Stother was talking about, okay, look, yeah, we've got a new developer for Crossroads. Yeah, we've already got a tenant already signed up, and that, so it's all good. And that was, we're going to be breaking ground and things are going to be happening. Drove by Crossroads yesterday, nothing's happening. Okay, so the cynic in me says, well, that was all nice for the political campaign. But what is really happening with Crossroads? It's been, what should be just a keystone of the city has been a vacant lot and an eyesore now for years and years and years.
Well, I won't call you a cynic, Tom. I'll just call you curious at the end of the day in terms of your viewpoints on things.
I thought you were going to say realistic.
No, just curious, just curious. And the Crossroads, it's okay to be curious about the Crossroads because I mean it's in the heart of the city. It's been a topic that's been talked about for close to a decade, probably longer in terms of conversations. I remember I was in the legislature when there was legislation brought, I thought, to help support the Crossroads redevelopment. But the reality is, I was at the groundbreaking with Mayor Ewing, actually, in terms of Woodbury's announcement of the first tenant, and I'm kind of showing the community a little bit of what's happening in terms of the actual construction. And the reality, they were very upfront with folks at the groundbreaking and said, look, it's going to take a year plus just to build the foundation of the development because it's underground parking.
Well, I can understand that, but I'm not seeing any heavy equipment there to start moving dirt.
I mean, the reality is Woodbury. I mean, Woodbury's been doing things. They were doing things before the actual groundbreaking too. I should emphasize. But I can't speak exactly to kind of what their business plan is in terms of when they've been doing work, what they've been doing, how they've been doing it. But they've got an agreement with the city. They've got their first tenant signed. Woodbury has a very, very proven record of doing big developments in Nebraska. I mean, they were the initial developer for the Nebraska Innovation Campus down at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I think, that kind of unique public-private partnership would have probably never happened without Woodbury coming in and being able to do that unique development. And so they've got a successful track record of being able to make big projects like this happen. And I think it's more of having the community understand, hey, it's going to take some time to build out an underground parking garage of this magnitude, of kind of how they're going to build this out. I didn't realize it as well until I learned more about the underground parking, at the groundbreaking. And I was like, hey, that makes sense. You want to create more space up above. We don't want another parking garage that will take a lot of extra space there. But I think I think based on their track record, I think people should feel comfortable about it.
And I've heard good things about their track record. So I have heard good things about that. And I understand it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah. Neither is the streetcar. But yet, boy, there's a lot of construction going on. Okay, we're not going to be able to ride it for another 2-3 years, but but they're working on it. And yes. I guess I'm just wondering why we're not seeing some work being done over there.
All I can say, Tom, is I'll take that. I will definitely let next time I talk to Woodbury, I'll let them know you chatted about it and put that in the file. But I'm a believer. They've been good community and corporate partners in Nebraska. And I think folks, when they see their broader vision, there's been a lot of folks along the way who've had ideas for the Crossroads, and big ideas that real visionary things. And Woodbury's been very pragmatic in explaining this is their vision. Here's how they're going to do it. This is what it's going to cost. And they've got a first tenant lined up, which is a good tenant, which is new to market in Nebraska. Yeah. And it's been successful in Texas and a host of other markets. And I think that alone shows, hey, they're not promising the sky to us. They're promising they're going to make sure it's going to be a great development. And I think both Mayor Stothert and Mayor Ewing both agreed that it was a great idea and it's a great project moving forward.
Not to get too political here, but the current administration has been rather all over the board when it comes to economic issues. How has that affected Omaha? How has that affected your job?
What administration?
The current one.
That's very broad and very vague. I think at the federal level, there's been some really good things that have happened, Tom, in terms of federal laws that have helped create some certainty in terms of the business community regarding taxes. That is perhaps the biggest thing that we hear about day in, day out is people just want certainty in their business. They want to know what the rules of the game are. They want to know what taxes they've got to pay, what regulations they've got to follow, and they just don't want things changing, month in and month out. And I would say the Trump administration, in that particular case, has been really proactive of trying to create more certainty in the tax code and more certainty in a lot of regulations that impact a lot of our chamber members. On the flip side, tariffs have been candidly the opposite of that certainty. That has created significant uncertainty to a lot of our members, a lot of our manufacturers who produce products here in the Omaha metro area, who ship those products and export those products overseas. And a lot of the tariffs that President Trump has issued and said we're going to issue tariffs on this day, and then everyone's preparing for it. Then he stops it and says we're not going to do it, and then says we're going to do it in 3 weeks, and then we're not going to do it then. That just kind of creates a stop go process for businesses that really just hurts them. I mean, it hurts their day-to-day operations because it's really, really difficult for businesses to be able to know how can we manufacture goods? How are we going to store our goods? How are we going to get our goods shipped in terms of financing this when we don't know what the tariffs may or may not be in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 months? And so the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has been pretty aggressive on this. State chambers and we're one of the larger metro chambers in the country all have been saying, look, we just want more certainty when it comes to tariffs. If this is what the policy is, we maybe not agree with the tariff policy, but we've got to stop some of this stop and go when we really think you should be trying to exclude small businesses from being impacted from the tariffs as well. The other issue I'd say that's a little bit of a challenge right now is immigration.
Yeah.
The Greater Omaha Chamber has had a long-standing history of being very active in immigration reform policy. We were one of the first metro chambers of commerce in the country that joined a global talent network, a group of 30 chambers of commerce that really formed kind of a business alliance to focus on immigration reform around the country about 12 years ago. And part of that was to try to address what we knew were existing workforce shortages, kind of what we were talking about, labor shortages, population challenges, and to see what could be done in terms of the impact it was having in the metro communities. Clearly, in terms of immigration kind of becoming now a bigger issue in the current Trump administration than maybe what it was in the last maybe year or two in terms of some federal policy issues. We are trying to do everything we can to try to reinforce to the administration and to our federal officials that we believe that there is a common ground that a lot of people can find, that we know that this is an issue that many people may not agree on, but from a pure business perspective, there is a need for more workers in a lot of industries. And we feel that creating some more certainty, creating opportunities, pathways for existing immigrants to kind of continue to do their work and to continue to live in the United States is something that is really needed right now in some of the conversations. And Congressman Bacon actually is one of the members of our delegation who's been pretty active in this space. He signed on to some legislation to kind of try to find some common ground amongst Democrats and Republicans in this space. And the business community, I think, overall is really hoping that we can continue to see maybe a little bit more folks come to the table to help see if there's a compromise that can be made somewhere down the line.
Yeah, because Nebraska's gross domestic product in the first quarter of this year was down, I believe, 6.1%. We can't keep going on that track. I mean, especially if you want to keep growing Omaha. I mean, with all the construction going on here and the growth that we anticipate for this area, take a look at what's happening there at the UNMC, and that If our gross domestic product keeps going down, that's going to hurt us all, not just the farmers.
Yeah, and that state that's a state that data that statewide gross domestic product that first quarter had a strong connection to agriculture, and I think the reality is it was kind of starting to be at the beginning of that tariff conversation you and I just kind of briefly had. I mean, I think that's something we've been fortunate as a metro region to have a very strong GDP. That's something that we as a metro region last year did very, very well, and as a greater Omaha region, as our regional GDP did very, very well. And so our regional growth in that sense is really good. It shows our productivity in our community, shows our productivity our businesses are able to provide. But when you lose labor force, and in some form or another, issues such as immigration, issues such as tariffs, even to some extent, possibly to some extent, you see additional regulatory issues that come out of nowhere, can have a real disruptive impact in businesses.
Okay, we're out of time. We're out of time here. There's a lot of other things I want to talk about, but I mean, end on this. Tell me one thing that you're really excited about right now in Omaha, and one thing that keeps you up at night.
One thing I'm really excited about right now is really what's going to happen long term, I'm convinced, with the development of the streetcar. I think most folks know that maybe that I had a prior experience with a streetcar a while ago, and as I've been in this role at the chamber, I've been very clear. The more and more people learn and experience a lot more of the data and the research behind the history of the streetcar, people will come to appreciate really the economic development that's going to come from this project. And it feels it may be a little bit of a headache right now, but I'm convinced the more and more people see the skylines of downtown Omaha, and people are going to see a lot of development along the route, people are going to be excited in terms of the future of the Omaha region because of this major transportation project. The thing that keeps me up at night, really, I'll tell you, is there's probably 15 things that keep me up at night. I'll tell you.
I didn't mean the top one.
No.
Top one or two.
I would say right now it feels the thing that keeps me maybe up at night the most is the lack of awareness amongst some of our elected officials that don't understand the importance of economic development right now. I think that is something, the work we do day in, day out, of realizing that this is a very competitive, very, very competitive industry, very competitive environment. People are coming all the time to recruit big companies from your community to try to get them to move. People are trying to make sure that they're trying to get any opportunity to come to their community instead of yours. And it requires a team effort. It requires, local officials, state officials, federal officials, and trying to help more and more elected officials to understand everybody's got their own agendas. And I understand that, being a former state senator, but I worked on economic development issues my whole 8 years in the legislature, and maybe that's why I'm impartial to that. But trying to remind folks that this is the lifeblood of our growth, our ability to grow our economy and be able to grow our wages and be able to grow prosperity for people. That's what's going to help provide access to better healthcare. That's what's going to provide access to better streets and better parks. That's what's going to provide access to better schools. And I think that's part of the challenge that I feel I go to bed every night thinking, we got to find a way to help people understand the importance of economic development. And Mayor Ewing, I had a great relationship working with Mayor Stothert, have a great relationship working with Mayor Ewing. He's been a big proponent of economic development in his first 2 months in office, which has been great. And so I'm excited maybe more of what maybe we'll be able to do here in Omaha. But that being said, there's a lot of work to do every single day to talk to a lot of other officials about what's happening.
Real quick, you mentioned the legislature. You got the West Nebraska people, Western Nebraska senators that really think Omaha is the devil. Okay, how do we do a better job working together? Yeah. At the same time, we got people in Omaha that think everybody in Western Nebraska are hicks. How do we become more of a unified state and work for the economic development of all areas?
Tom, this was an issue I dealt with as a state senator from South Omaha for 8 years, which is part of it is just relationship building. Part of it is being able to find a common ground on issues, because people who live in Scottsbluff or people who live in McCook, they have similar issues that we have in South Omaha or people who have in Millard. And I think it's trying to find those issues that you can sit down and talk to people about, realizing that if growing the economy and creating opportunities for people to chase their dreams, to be able to help give their kids a better life, and you can find policies to work on to do that together. That's the best option that we did when I was in the legislature. But it takes time, and the economy right now, there's different aspects of the Western economy versus different aspects of the Omaha economy, and I think that's what we're trying to figure out right now is how do we create a stronger bridge between Greater Nebraska and the Omaha area.
I suggest they stop worrying about bathrooms and worry more about economic development, but that's my own personal opinion. Heath, thank you very much for doing this. I find it fascinating. There's so much happening in this town that I think the average person is unaware of. Mm-hmm. And hopefully through conversations like this, they become more aware of just what is going on in the city.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for joining us. Don't forget the podcast. We've got every Tuesday a new podcast coming up. Go to the YouTube channel, the Beckett's Talking YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook, and we'll see you next time. Take care, and bye, y'all.